Hi everyone, it's Megan with devCode, and today we are in for a treat. I'm joined with Brooke, Dana, and Megan, and we're going to have a Women Who Code roundtable. These lovely ladies before me are very accomplished developers and who graduated from devCode and have since landed developer jobs. So welcome everyone. Super excited to have you all.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Before we dive in and kind of get into the meat and potatoes of it, I would love for everyone to kind of give me a little bit of a brief background, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit about what you did before devCode and kind of where this mind shift happened, where you were like, maybe I want to be a developer.
Sure. Yeah. I'll go first. My name is Brooke McBain. Before I got into devCodeCamp, I was in sales. And I actually got furloughed from my job and then eventually fired because of COVID. I had known someone who went through devCodeCamp and basically was like a huge success story and got a job right after and was, so that automatically kind of like attracted me to it. I mean, the fact that the IT world, the computer tech world is going absolutely nowhere. So kind of like limitless opportunities. So I felt, and I have a brother who codes as well. So just kind of in the family, knew a success story or two. And so I decided to try it out myself. And so it worked.
What about you, Megan? What was your story?
Yeah, so actually kind of similar to you, Brooke. So prior to devCodeCamp and getting into coding, I worked at a nonprofit here in Milwaukee. And it's called Girls Who Code, and like their whole premise is just getting girls into computer science and coding. But it's all after school club based. So with COVID and schools closing, that I wasn't able to stay on, unfortunately. But that was the first thing that kind of like piqued my interest with coding. And similar to you, I had a friend of a friend who had gone through the program, didn't have any background in coding or computer science, really loved it, really was thriving in her new job. So I had kind of a virtual coffee date with her. And I picked her brain and I was like, yeah, we seem very like in similar places here. So I just kind of decided to take a leap of faith and do it. And I'm really, really glad I did.
Awesome. Yeah, I love those virtual coffee dates. It's kind of been my saving grace in this pandemic. What about you, Dana?
So my original degree was actually in biology. I worked about 8 years in wildlife biology. I had been working for a nonprofit. But I love wildlife biology, but it just wasn't paying the bills. And in that job, I had done a little like tiny bit of website development. So I was like, decided to go back to school for IT. I got a degree in IT, and through that, I did take a Java class, and that kind of started piquing my interest on coding. However, once I graduated, I just didn't have enough experience. I spent a year trying to break out in the field, trying to, learn online by myself. And once COVID hit, I had been looking at boot camps for a while. I'd kind of been looking at them and kind of wanted to do one, but we just couldn't afford to live on one paycheck for that long. But once COVID hit, I had been working in retail and just wasn't feeling safe where I was. So my husband and I kind of decided that it was now or never. He was able to, foot us for a few months, and I took the leap of faith and signed up for devCodeCamp.
Wow, that's so brave. That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's crazy background, especially going from science into IT. Like it definitely shows that you were definitely eager towards finding what would make you passionate and what would not only pay the bills, but also kind of keep you excited and constantly learning. Because that's my favorite and my least favorite thing about this field that we're in is that you're constantly learning. Like we're just never done. Speaking of never being done, what are some kind of notions that you guys had maybe forefront in your mind before you joined this field? So like, for example, I always thought you had to be really great at math before I dived into code. And a little kind of telling about myself. When my senior year of high school, when I was taking like these dual enrollment classes and whatnot to get some college credits, my boyfriend at the time did my math and I wrote his English papers because that's just how it worked out. So when I was, looking at boot camps and looking into this, I was like, am I going to be able to do this because of maths? And that was before I knew like programmers were lazy. And I was like, there's ways around it. Like, it was awesome. So yeah, I'm just curious if you guys had any other kind of thoughts before you realized, oh, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, from my perspective, I guess I didn't mention this. I came from knowing like absolutely nothing about coding, like software development. I barely had a computer like for the past couple years. I just bought one for devCodeCamp. So I guess the only preconceived notion I had is software developers are a little nerdy in their homebodies. So I would say that relates to myself as well and is still true. So
yeah, like similar, just definitely thought it was more, I don't know, I'm like very soft science oriented. Like my major was in anthropology. I think I took one math class in like my entirety of college. And I definitely felt like, okay, I don't have like the brain wiring to do something like software development. And I feel like now I see it as, I really love learning new languages. And I never made that connection that like it is essentially learning new languages. And that like completely changed my approach to learning and like made me enjoy it so much more than just like, oh, it's just sitting at a computer, it's math, it's monotonous and boring.
Right. We're just going to be code monkeys forever. Yeah, no. Once I realized I was wrong about all of that, it kind of really opened up the horizon for me as well. But that doesn't mean I didn't challenge. Wasn't challenged. I definitely struggled a good bit through my boot camp that I went through. It was one of those where like I loved programming for like the first half of the day, and then the second half of the day when I was like, all right, I guess I'll look at these bugs, it was just, whew, it was definitely challenging. I didn't go through devCodeCamp though, so I'm a little curious about what were some challenging aspects that you guys went through.
oh gosh, just about all of it. I don't know. I guess I could add in a little like piece of advice here too, but I like from the beginning, I really struggled. Like, but one of my like big things about that was I wasn't really reaching out for help at all. So I guess that was like my biggest challenge going through the course, at the beginning at least, was not reaching out for help. And everything was quite literally, I mean, not to push anyone away from it, but the whole thing for me was just like extremely challenging, but you learn to love the challenge. So
I mean, you're living proof that even though you struggled all the way through it, you succeeded. You graduated with a great score, an awesome capstone project, which I personally saw. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Got hired at a startup. Like, that's amazing.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, I got very lucky. All thanks to devCodeCamp though. And you.
What about you, Dana? Was there any part of the course that you really kind of, I don't know, that was more challenging? I think you can speak to this a little bit better with your science background and your IT background as well.
Part of it was knowing when to ask for help. Like Brooke was talking about, figuring out how long you should kind of try to figure it out yourself before, asking for help. So you're not, wanting to throw your computer against the wall. It does get to that sometimes.
Yeah.
And the learning how to problem solve, like it's a little different in between the biologies. Like they're both sciences in their own way, but between the biology and this side of it is you really have to know how to Google things.
True.
Like,
yep.
And figure out exactly how to phrase the question you're wanting to, figure out and to get the, the answers you're looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, the problem solving was a struggle, just trying to figure out, how to work your way through your problems that you're having.
Yeah. And I've heard that feedback from quite a few students that come through devCode, because I know devCode kind of teaches in a little bit of a different style. And it's one of those, and I know a previous student worded it as, we would work through a project and then I would need something to really finish it and put it together. And then that would be the technology that he would learn the next day. And I would imagine that's like super frustrating at the same time, but it also really cements what you guys are learning and the whole process of, learning how to learn, not just learning how to program one specific language. Because I know, Brooke, you're diving into a whole new language at your job, aren't you?
Yeah, I do a lot of, I just graduated last month, so like this December. So I guess 2 months ago. But yeah, so I've been doing a lot of React since then and TypeScript and yeah, a bunch of new things. I've just been honestly constantly learning new things since I left.
You
Always
compare a
new
little
things
bit.
to learn.
What'd you say?
Go ahead, Megan.
Oh,
Either.
I was gonna say, always new things to learn. Oh yeah, either Megan.
Yeah. Either
You're like a
Megan.
talk show. Can you speak a little bit, Brooke, about, kind of learning your first languages and technologies versus how, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I would imagine it's a little bit easier picking up these second languages.
Yeah, definitely. I think any software developer would say that Google is definitely like a coder's best friend. Um, I spend a lot of my days Googling all the time, but I guess from devCodeCamp, and I guess devCodeCamp gave me the tools to be able to do this, to actually know how to Google stuff and make it worth it. But like when I started back to like asking for help and stuff, when I started like Googling anything to try and learn by myself was quite nearly impossible because you go to like Stack Overflow, but you like in it'll answer your question, but you have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Like coming from like zero coding background, I had no idea what anything said on anything. So the answer was right there in front of me, but like I couldn't read it. So I guess that makes it a lot easier for me now going through devCodeCamp. I definitely like got the tools to be able to, and the like the foundation to be able to effectively like learn new languages now. And it's a lot easier, let me tell you.
Yeah, I know that was definitely one thing that I was taught when I was learning my first, I learned JavaScript first. And they're like, well, picking up your second and third language is going to be so much easier. And I'm like, you guys are lying to me. It's not going to be.
Definitely a lot easier.
I find that, having that first language, whatever language it is, as your foundation, it kind of gives you the context clues to kind of piece out everything else around you. So that was always
Yeah,
super
definitely.
exciting and very relieving to find out myself.
Absolutely.
Segue a little bit, since we've kind of started talking about you guys after graduation. Can you all give me some insights to your job search and kind of how you guys tackled that as women, kind of breaking into this boys club, if you will, of an industry? I'm gonna point on somebody. Megan, you go first.
Sure. Yeah. So I graduated back end of August and immediately wanted to start looking for jobs. There were some people in my cohort that, opted to continue learning or maybe went to a different boot camp, but I really wanted to break into the field. And it was really daunting at first, just again, having like a soft science background. I had never had a technical interview. I didn't really know what these companies were expecting. On top of that, most of these positions, all the interviews were virtual. So I really kind of leaned into devCodeCamp for that. And they were really great with, folks would reach out to me and be like, I want to pass your resume onto this person. Like, do you have a revised version? Or, hey, I saw this post on LinkedIn. You should apply for this job. And I ended up actually getting hired at the first job I went through the full interview process with. And I remember they had scheduled an interview for me. And I found out like the day before that it was actually going to be my technical interview. And I'd never had a technical interview. And I reached out to Mike and I was just like in a panic, just what do I do? So he actually like right before they set up a mock interview for me. And it was like verbatim, some of those questions came up and they gave me like such good feedback on what to expect. And they just kind of hammered home, like, be yourself, and just try and be as like, comfortable and just at ease as you can. And that really helped too, just kind of keeping that at the forefront of my mind. Like even with the technical interview, if I got stuck on something, just being open and comfortable and talking through my thought process, like we had a good conversation going and it worked out well. So, but definitely like everybody I interviewed with was a man. Everybody on my team is is a man. So it's definitely a little bit daunting to be like, hello, I'm pretty new to the field. I'm, 20 years younger than most of you. You've been at this company longer than I've been in school. So very steep learning curve, but I feel like they equipped me really well to deal with the interview process.
Always great to hear. What about you, Dana? Did you, what did you kind of discover jumping into your career search?
My process was actually very similar to Megan's. I graduated at the end of June and I jumped right into applying for jobs. And devCode was very helpful. They were sending them along, and they actually asked me if I wanted to be to demo for a company that they were in contact with. And so I demoed for that, and they gave out our resumes to them. And I actually did get an interview through that company, and I was hired on. But yeah, that was my first and only interview I went through, and never done a technical interview. You know, I'd been using the resources devCode gave us, and you know, while I was applying and I was working through some of those, but as soon as they scheduled the technical interview, I reached out to Mike and I was like,
help me,
terrified, help me. And he set up a mock interview based on kind of the parameters that I was given by, you know, by the company. And it was very helpful. You know, he walked me through, we did the questions and, you know, pointed out things I could do better, like, you know, just be confident in myself. But yeah, that was super helpful. And yeah, they definitely provided the tools that was needed in the process.
Sweet. Spoiler alert for everyone watching. I was actually Brooke's career. So I'm expecting her to speak very nice things about her career service and her job.
You got it. You got it. Yeah, I think from my perspective, I got really, really, really lucky. I've seen like the struggle that other people go through trying to find a job, like out of a boot camp, especially. And I mean, I got really lucky because I did have Megan and I had Eric, and they really truly helped me. LinkedIn was a really big one. I hadn't really, like, when I went through college, like I utilized LinkedIn and I had one, but they never really like stressed the importance of it. But yeah, I think that really helped me. I made a ton of connections, but ultimately in the end, I got really, really lucky. I probably applied to 20 jobs a day probably, and it was about 2 weeks, and I can't remember if it was Megan or Eric, but someone messaged me and was like, hey, like this guy is looking for a junior developer. And I interviewed with him, and a week later I got the job. But so yeah, I got extremely, extremely lucky. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think an important takeaway is that, you know, I've got 3 individuals in front of me, and all of you had, you know, different kind of avenues when it comes to career services and kind of your job hunt in general. I know one student, kind of to piggyback off of your talk earlier about, you know, kind of technical interviews and just being kind of terrified of them because they're ultimately there to intimidate you, right? And it's hard to walk into those super confident. But I know one thing that, you know, I always tell my students, and the student that actually graduated with Brooke, she had this experience where she went through a technical interview and she was doing a take-home assessment, and she was working through, you know, the user stories that this company had given her, and they wanted to submit it, and then they would meet and then go back over everything. And she had to pivot and use a completely different technology than they requested. And when she got to the bonus, she didn't have enough time, so it was time most of them were. So she just pseudo-coded out how she would have approached the bonus had she had the time. And you know, and I was so excited because that's what I had been telling her. You know, it's not so much about, you know, executing the code the cleanest they've ever seen it, because as junior developers, none of us are really in the position to give them the cleanest code they've ever seen. But she showed that she, you know, can think very quickly on her feet, and she pivoted to a new technology, and that she logically attacked the problem, even though she didn't have enough time to, you know, code it out. And I believe they told her that that was one of the best challenges they'd ever seen. So it was after that the light bulb really went off with her, and she started acing and killing all of these technicals. And I was so excited, so proud.
That's
but
awesome.
Yeah, career services has come a long way for sure.
That's Janelle. Janelle did that. That's awesome. Good for her.
Absolutely killed it.
I forgot to say, but I mean, one of the main reasons I got so lucky is because I had maybe one interview before the guy I'm working with, and I didn't even have to do a technical interview for the guy I currently work with. He came from a business background, and he never went through a boot camp, or he never went to college for software development. He just self-taught himself. So he knew someone, like he could easily teach someone coming out of a boot camp. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's important too to highlight that a lot of these companies, some of the more traditional companies are definitely sticking to, whiteboarding and technical assessments, but a lot of
Yeah.
companies these days are looking for a culture fit. And when you
Yep.
interview someone, you just tend to know, so that's super exciting and also very encouraging for women as well that, might kind of be on the fence about, I don't know if I can get on camera and like whiteboard this problem out in front of someone. It's all about like what you guys said earlier, the advice that Mike gave you is just be yourself. That goes a long, long way. But yeah, no, that was all great tidbits. Thanks for sharing that, everybody. That was awesome. I'm kind of curious, you guys are all at different levels in your career. It sounds like you all graduated at different times. What are you guys' kind of plans and outlooks? I hate to say, like, what's your 5-year plan? It sounds so cheesy, but really, like, what are you guys thinking, career-wise for the next, 3, 4, 5 years?
For sure. Like you mentioned, I feel like where I'm at, I really like where I'm at right now. It's just one guy, it's just me and him. We do mobile or web and mobile development. So I think my like opportunity for growth there is really good because he does plan on trying to, get more clients as it comes. And I guess I'll be right there with him, hopefully, as he grows his company. So I'm really excited for that.
That's awesome. What about you, Dana?
Yeah, I'm going to keep continuing to learn and grow in this job. It's been a really great, like, kind of starter job. Ideally, in the future, I would love to somehow meld my biology and software development backgrounds in some way. So that's my ultimate goal, is somehow to kind of meld the two degrees together, so I can kind of get both passions back in my life again.
Yeah, of course. That's awesome. What about you, Megan?
Yeah, like similar to what you guys said, I really like the company that I'm at. It's Brooke, it's kind of the opposite of yours. It's like a very large, it's like a global company, but based out of Brookfield. And there's senior developers on this team that have been at this company for like 20 years. And I feel like I'm learning so much just observing them and working under them. So I'm really excited to just kind of stick with this and keep learning and keep growing.
Yeah, I know that was always my favorite part about, kind of after graduation and I had a couple contract jobs before I landed my first full-time job, but it was just mind-blowing to me that I was getting paid to work, but also to learn when I had just kind of struggle bust the last couple months learning how to do this thing. I was now getting paid to learn. And I think that's just so exciting, especially since, like we mentioned earlier, we're never done. We're going to be learning up until the day that we retire from this, industry. No, that was awesome. This has been great, you guys. As we kind of wrap up and tie up our conversation here, I'm curious and I know you guys have been giving tidbits of advice along the way, which is awesome, but I was curious what advice you would give to a woman who's kind of on the fence about this as a career, or kind of joining this into an industry. You all have different backgrounds. I think you all are at a unique kind of position to speak to that a little bit. What is some advice you would give someone?
Sure. Yeah, I would just say, like, don't ever feel like you can't do it. Doesn't matter where you are coming from, like what career you're coming from or how old you are. I mean, you can definitely do it. I mean, there is like a commitment factor to it. Like going through devCodeCamp is a full-time job. And if you like cannot commit full-time job to it, you will not, like a full-time work schedule to it, you will not do well. So I would just say never think you can't do it, but be committed and like be ready to work.
Nice. Megan?
Yeah, similar to that. Yeah, it's a boot camp for a reason, and it is like a very intense 12 weeks. But that being said, like you're gonna learn a lot. And I mean, if you're on the fence about a field or a career in this field, like don't knock it until you try it. I really never thought I would enjoy coding. And then like I solved my first, or I, fixed my first bug, and it was like my eyes lit up. Like I was so excited. So, this field is for you, and there's space for women in this field, and we need more women in this field. So even if you just have like the faintest interest in it, give it a shot and see how far you can go, because it'll take you pretty far.
Yeah, we definitely have quite a few seats to fill for women in this industry. What about you, Dana?
Similar to both of them, like, it may seem like a boys club, but there's a strong group of women out there that, you can have them, they'll have your back. every woman in the field is going to have your back. And yeah, just don't think you can't do it. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a struggle. You're going to get frustrated, but figuring out that, solving that first bug or getting your first project, it's always worth it.
When it compiles the first time, it's like, yes.
Just stare in disbelief, like,
Yeah.
it actually works.
Are you sure this is working? No, that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me this afternoon. Very, very awesome advice, lovely stories, and great that I got to meet 2 grads that came through devCode that was here before me. So with that, I'm going to bid you adieu. Have a very good day. And if you guys have any questions about devCodeCamp, please reach out. We are always here to answer your questions. Bye.